This lecture is on bone and other skeletal connective tissues, which are cartilage tissues. As we all know, a human being is made of trillions of cells, and cells with the same functions, once they become a group, we call it tissues. And there are 4 types of tissues in our body, which are epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. And the bone and the cartilage we are going to talk about today, they are in connective tissue. When we look at the 4 types of connective tissue, they are, number 1, connective tissue proper, which includes fat, fibrous tissue. Number 2, skeletal tissue. Number 3, cartilage tissue. And number 4, blood. So these are the histology examples of areolar connective tissue or connective tissue proper, bone, different types of cartilages, and the blood under the microscope. So if we look at these slides, because if you have a histology slide in your hand, and what you need to expect is there are only 4 types of tissue in our body, and now you need to know the characteristics of epithelial, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. So if you do not find those, you know that you are dealing with the connective tissue. So let's say if we are seeing something like a blood film, that connective tissue slide is for blood. If you are seeing the osteon, which is something like that, we will explain about that later. Then you are dealing with the skeletal tissue, which is a form of connective tissue. If you are seeing one of these similar pictures, then you know that you are dealing with cartilage and loose areolar connective tissue. You will see something like that. Of course, they are pretty similar, but with time and education, you will be able to differentiate these different types of tissues. So this is a patient, a young motorcyclist, not wearing any protective clothing, being thrown off from a bike and came to the emergency room with this injury. The bone is broken, exposed to the air, the skin over the bone, there is a big loss, everything exposed, high degree of contamination. You can even see the thrombosed vein, which is just running around here. And now this is a big problem. So what we need to do, just resuscitate the patient, take him to OR, thoroughly debride the wound, make sure the bones are debrided, cleaned up, washed out, and then realign to the best possible position. And we put an external fixator for temporary, for our definitive treatment. So we will be talking about this bone today, and of course, the cartilages in our body. So if somebody asks you, what is a bone? What is a cartilage? For me, my answer would be a bone is a specialized connective tissue. A cartilage is a specialized connective tissue. And of course, being connective tissue, they will be made from cells and matrix. So in the sea of matrix, there will be cells spread inside. And what is a joint? A joint is a junction between 2 bone surfaces. Now a joint becomes a structure, it's no longer a tissue. So before we jump into the bone, let's look at the histology slides of the connective tissues. Yeah. So the very first slide is areolar connective tissue, which is acting as a cushion and more like a glue. So our epithelial tissue, look at these epithelial tissue, which need to sit on another form of tissue. And this areolar connective tissue, which is also called lamina propria, is holding all these epithelial tissue, supporting them and packaging them, surrounding them. So that is the areolar connective tissue. If you look in the microscope, this is very typical of areolar connective tissue. It is something like you are seeing the ground from the air. So let's say at nighttime, about 7 o'clock, you are on the plane and you see you are back to the city and you can start seeing the city. There are a few lights here and there are a few little streams of lights running around. So these strings are collagen fibers, and you can see black dotted areas, which are the cells, which could be fibroblast or elastoblast. And in between the fibers, collagen fibers, these spaces, they will be filled with ground substances. So to some extent, we need to have a photographic memory of this, because this is very typical. So this is the areolar connective tissue. So now let's go and look at the cartilage, which is another form of connective tissue. And we have three types of cartilage, which are hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. So fibrocartilage is made of dense fibrous tissue, and you can see the dense fibrous fibers just running in around the cells. Of course, the cells will be made of the fibroblasts, and the matrix is dense fibrous tissue, dense collagen fibers. And it is just like, you are looking at a storm from a satellite coming into the shore. So let's jump to the hyaline cartilage. In hyaline cartilage, you can also see the cells, which is floating in the matrix, which are made of fiber. And hyaline cartilage is a very smooth cartilage, and therefore its fibers are really, really, really smooth. Look at that. Therefore, the matrix of the hyaline cartilage is like a pale and thin and transparent, and just like a little hazy ground glass. That's all. And you can see the cells here. Elastic cartilage, it is quite difficult to differentiate from other forms of cartilage unless you do a special stain. And that stain we stick in the elastin, which is in the matrix of the elastic cartilage. And now you can see the big chondrocytes in the matrix. So this is the typical color, which is stained by the special stain for the elastic cartilage. So now we all know a few little particular views on histology slides of three different forms of cartilage. And in this diagram, as you can see, these chondrocytes, the cartilage forming cell, chondro means cartilage, cyte means cell, chondrocyte means cartilage forming cells, they are sitting in little pockets. Here, they are sitting in little pockets. So these chondrocytes are sitting in little pockets. The same thing, like in the fibrous cartilage or elastic cartilage, you will see the same thing, chondrocytes staying in the little pockets. These pockets are called lacuna, L-A-C-U-N-A. This is the slide of, yes, you are right, it is a slide of epithelial tissue. Why do you say that? You see cellularity, polarity, The cells are sitting on another type of tissue. And therefore, you said this is the epithelial tissue, which is very different from the connective tissue. Look at that, yeah? This is now, I believe, in your eyes, it is gradually becoming clear. So we said connective tissue is made of cell and matrix. Let's talk about the cells here. So cells could be either fibroblasts, chondroblasts, or elastoblasts, or might be a mixture. Fibroblast, fibro means fibrous tissue, blast means cell. Fibroblast will form fibrous tissue into the matrix. Chondroblast will form cartilage tissue, and the same thing, osteoblast will form bone tissue. Of course, there will be a few other cells like fat cell, white blood cell, macrophages, and mast cell. So that is the cellular portion of the connective tissue. Let's go to the matrix portion. Matrix portion includes fiber and ground substance. Fibers could be collagen fibers, elastin fibers, or reticular fibers. So these fibers are running like a mesh, and in between these mesh, the gaps are filled with the proteoglycan or glycosaminoglycan. What is collagen? It is a combination of 3 amino acids. Of course, it's arranged in a particular manner. Elastin, again, amino acid change. Reticular fiber, again, it is made of collagen. So why do we need these glycosaminoglycan or proteoglycan? They attract water, and cartilages, they need lots of water. And they are also to fill the gap in between the collagen fibers and the cells. So now we know that cartilage is a specialized connective tissue, which is made of cell. If we want cartilage, we will use chondrocyte. If we want fibrous cartilage, we will use fibroblasts. And these chondroblasts, fibroblasts, osteocytes, they are all sitting in the lacunae. And matrix is also made of elastic fibers, collagen fibers, and the ground substance will keep water content, which is a very important property of cartilage. And there is one layer which is called perichondrium. Peri means around, chondrium means cartilage, perichondrium. So these sheet of fiber, which is also another type of connective tissue, which enclose the cartilage, which wraps around the cartilage like a blanket. It is a dense, irregular connective tissue. As we know that axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. And if you look at here, we had elastic cartilage to start with. Elastic cartilage usually exists in structure start with E. Let's see, that might be an easy way to remember. For example, our external ear. So our ear is made of, external ear is made of elastic cartilage. And the epiglottis, which is the little valve, closure valve, which splits the respiratory tract and gastrointestinal tract to make sure the food go into the esophagus, into the gastrointestinal tract, or the air comes into the trachea and the lungs. This valve function closure and opening. That epiglottis is also made of elastic cartilage. And as you can see here, that color-coded blue, light blue color-coded here in the joint, here in the joints, here. It is hyaline cartilage. So hyaline cartilage is the most abundant cartilage in our body. It is covering the bone ends in the joint, as you can see here. It is the rib cage where the ribs come and attach to the sternum. They change into hyaline cartilage, and then finally they go and meet at the sternum. So joint articular surface, joint surface inside the joint surface. So now you can see the articular cartilages. These are the cartilages which line the bone inside a joint, bone surface inside the joint. These are made of hyaline cartilage. And the chondral cartilage, the cartilage for the ribs, they are also made of hyaline cartilage. The fibrous cartilage, of course, fibrous tissue, which is very strong, and therefore they will be used for tying two bones together. So the bones in our symphysis, pubis, like which tie two bones, right pelvic bone and left pelvic bone. So we want to use this fibrous cartilage. So, and the inside our spine, and spines are made of multiple blocks of vertebra. In between these vertebrae, for the cushion effect, we will also use the red color coded fibrous cartilage because they are very hardware. They can absorb the weight. And at the same time, inside the knee, we have a fibrocartilage structure, which we call meniscus. These acts as a cushion in between the two bone ends. Even the bone ends are covered with the hyaline cartilage. To absorb the impact, we want extra support, and therefore we will use meniscus. So you will see this structure later in the lecture. So now, once somebody dies, if the cartilage, costal cartilage stay cartilages, and if they are not changed into the bone, we will see something like that. The cartilage will dissolve when we are left with the bone. So this is the little baby ultrasound scan inside the womb. And you can start seeing the shadow of a little baby. The bones are not fully fused yet. You can see the gap in between the bones, and you can see some bone here. And most of the bones we can see on this ultrasound scan are cartilages. But of course, the skull bone, which is a flat bone, which is formed directly into bone. But most of the bones in our body, they were initially cartilages and gradually changed into bones. So now you have seen the different types of cartilages, and let's go a little bit more into detail. And this is the elastic cartilage, which is present in the ear and epiglottids. You can see the cell, which is chondrocyte. Chondrocytes are staying in the pockets called lacuna. And you can see the elastic fibers running in between the cells. And these fibers make matrix, and matrix is made of these elastic fibers and the gelatinous ground substances, which are proteoglycan and glycosaminoglycan. Elastic fibers, elastic cartilage, chondrocytes, they will have elastic fibers. These fibers are delicate. Collagen fibers, they are for flexibility and elasticity. So now when we come to the lungs, let's see our windpipe, which is what we call trachea. Trachea is dividing into right bronchus and left bronchus for the right lungs and the left lungs. If you look at that, trachea is a tubular structure. Outermost layer of the trachea is cartilage ring, and you can see the multiple cartilage rings piled together to form a tube. And these cartilage rings are also made of So hyaline cartilage, as you can see, the matrix is nice and clear, like a little ground substance. You can see the chondrocytes in the lacuna. And now we can see a structure called perichondrium, which is the dense fibrous tissue, which is covering around the cartilage. And hyaline cartilage, as we have seen, most abundant cartilage in the body. The chondrocytes are usually round. Collagen matrix, which is made of collagen only, no fibrous layer, and it contains lots of water. Therefore, it gives a clear color on the histology slides. It is for flexibility and resilience. It is for articular cartilage, respiratory tract cartilages, and costal cartilage. Fibrous cartilage, as we can see, like it is just looking from the satellite, looking at a storm coming into the shore. And we are looking at that from the satellite. You can see the big, strong, fibrous collagen fibers coming in. And you can see the cells, chondrocytes here. So these collagen fibers are thick collagen fibers. And therefore, they are coarse, they are rough looking. We will use it for strength and durability for both extension and compression. So the examples for these fibrocartilages are meniscus and intervertebral disc. So now we are looking at a knee, which is a right knee. We can see the distal femur, proximal tibia, and proximal fibula. We have a kneecap here, which we call patella, and we can start seeing inside the knee joint. So now this gray color, white gray color coated is articular cartilage. The bone inside the joint is covered by hyaline cartilage. That hyaline cartilage is called articular cartilage because it's inside the joint. And the same thing, the same hyaline cartilage will be covering the upper surface of the tibia. And we can see a green color coated, which is the meniscus, which is something like this. Here, crescent shape, one on the medial side and another one on the lateral side. So now this is the photograph from keyhole surgery, which is arthroscopic surgery, showing the cartilage inside the knee joint, distal end of the femur. Joint surface is covered with the articular cartilage, which is made of hyaline cartilage. And the same thing here. And this is the fibrous cartilage, which is what we call meniscus. And this is a nice and pristine knee, but this is a knee where we have used for a few years. Therefore, the meniscus is being a bit ragged and being used looking. Now this is a knee injury, like where we have the chondral hyaline cartilage, articular cartilage injury, and now there is an exposed bone. Here, what I want to say is cartilages, they do not have blood supply. Hyaline cartilage, they do not have blood supply. They get their nutrition from diffusion from the underlying bone. So now let's look at another form of cartilage. This is the distal femur and proximal tibia of an immature skeleton. Why do I say immature? Because the bone growth plates are still open. So this bone is still growing, and therefore I call it immature skeleton. And if we look at this box here, region, we can see the growth plate, which is also a form of cartilage. So in the growth plates, the chondrocytes are originally in a resting state and gradually start proliferating and gradually become bigger and bigger. And finally, this chondrocyte area will be calcified. And this is the way our bones get longer and longer. So the growth plate, which we call epiphyseal plate or physis, is also cartilage. So now we can see on this X-ray, on this knee, in this here, we have a gap because this gap is filled with the articular cartilage, which is made of hyaline cartilage, and the fibrous cartilage, which is the meniscus. On this side, there is no more cartilage and the bone is rubbing on the another bone. This is a condition we call osteoarthritis. So if we look at this X-ray, the child, we can still not see the head of the femur. It is present, but it is just we cannot see. And it is because at this age, the head of the femur is still a little cartilage, and therefore it cannot be seen on the X-ray. Now we start seeing that cartilage area, which is the head of and neck of the femur area, starting to get some bone changes. So these cartilage are starting to be replaced with a little bone, but still we have growth plate, and this little bone area gradually gets bigger and bigger. And finally, when we get to adults, the growth plate will also get fused and calcified. So now this is the histology slide for the cartilage tissue, which is made of cell and matrix. And now I hope you can appreciate the matrix and the cells floating in the matrix. So now if we change these lines, we see different picture. We see the cells around here in a matrix, but they are arranged in a very particular manner, like an onion ring. They are cycle and cycle and cycle surrounding the central canal. This is the typical of a bone histology tissue, and this is the structural unit of a compact bone, which is called osteon. Osteon can also be called as Harvesian system, and the canal in the center, which we see here, it is called Harvesian canal, and the whole Harvesian canal with the other surrounding cells and the matrix is all Harvesian system, which is also known as osteon. Inside the Harvesian canal, we will see the neurovascular bundles, blood vessels and nerves. Now, this is a closer look of the osteon, which is made of a central Harvesian canal, which is surrounded by circular cells, and there are radiations here, and these matrix, that is the connective tissue, but this connective tissue is bone tissue. So the way I see is, it is, there will be matrix, in the matrix there will be ground substance, and on top of that, if we put chondrocyte, we get cartilage. If we put fibroblasts, we get fibrous tissue. If we put osteoblasts, we will get bone tissue. It is just like baking. You mix flour, water, butter, egg. Depending on different ratio, you will get bread, cake, chocolate cake. So that's the way I see it. You have seen this diagram already. A connective tissue is made of cell and matrix is made of fiber and the ground substance. Bone, specialized connective tissue made of cell and matrix. Cartilage, specialized connective tissue made of cell and matrix. A joint is the junction between two bone surfaces. So now we are going to talk about bone. What are the functions of bone? Why do we need bones? It supports the body. It is for the locomotion, movement. It is for protection, such as the thoracic cage or the cranial cavity, which protects the brain. Mineral storage. So there are lots of calcium and phosphate in the body. When our blood needs, they can be taken out from the bone. And inside the bone, we have bone marrow, and it's a site for blood cell formation and energy storage. And it's also involved in the energy metabolism. So the bones can be classified according to their shape. For example, long bone like femur, humerus, short bones like little square bones like carpal bones in our wrist, the short bones in our tarsal bones, flat bone like a skull bone, sternum, or irregular bone, which is something like vertebra. Depending on their microstructure, like cortical bone or cancellous bone, and whether they are mature bone or immature bone. So this is the classification according to their shape. And according to their microstructure, we can say spongy or compact. Spongy means trabecular bone, softer, usually softer inner layer, and compact bone or cortical bone, which is the dense outer layer, where we can see the osteon. So we won't be able to see osteons in the spongy bone. We can only see osteon in the compact bone, which is the outer layer. And now the bone is cartilage tissue, therefore it is made of cell and matrix, and the cell is osteoblast. Of course, osteo means bone, blast means cell, bone form means cell. Where do we get osteoblast from? We get osteoblast from the stem cell, which we call osteogenic stem cell. So the bone forming cell stem cells. And when the osteoblasts in a resting state, they are called osteocytes. So osteoclast is a hemopoietic cell, which does not come from the osteogenic stem cell. And they are for bone resorption. So when the osteoblast is making bone, the osteoclast is resorbing bone, which means like removing the bone. And these two things need to be balanced. Osteoblast and osteoclast need to be balanced. Only then we have a normal state. If our bones are depositing from the osteoblasts, but if the osteoclast does not function, does not do the bone resorption, then there will be more and more bones deposited in our bones already. And that will make the bone very thick, very hard, and very brittle. The same thing is osteoclasts are too active, then all the bones from our bones will be eaten away, and the bone will be very thin and fragile. So these two needs to be balanced too. Our bone matrix is made of course, matrix means fibers and ground substances. These matrix in the bone, the fibers, which are collagen fibers, because collagen contain carbon, and therefore we will call organic matrix. And the ground substance, glycosaminoglycan, proteoglycan, they are also in the group of organic matrix. And we also have inorganic matrix. The matrix where there is no carbon, so hydroxyapatite, calcium, magnesium, phosphate. So these are called inorganic matrix. So in between the collagen fibers, there will be ground substances, both of which are organic matrix. On top of that, we put calcium, magnesium in that matrix to make the bone stronger and to fill the gap. Osteogenic stem cells of mesenchyme origin we develop into osteoblast. Osteoblasts will generate bone matrix. Osteoblasts will generate collagen, ground substance. Osteocytes are inactive osteoblasts. And osteoclasts are hematopoietic cell origin. They secrete hydrochloric acid and lysosome, and they are for bone resorption. Now we said bone matrix and organic matrix. Inorganic matrix. Organic matrix is collagen, ground substance, proteoglycan. Inorganic matrix, hydroxyapatite, calcium, magnesium, phosphate. And now we need to remember a term, mineralization. What is mineralization? Mineralization is a process by which the organic matrix is filled with inorganic compound, such as hydroxyapatite, calcium, magnesium, and phosphate. So now I'm going to split the bone into half, and let's see. And so this is a humerus, which is a long bone. The length of the humerus in the shaft, we call, in terms, it is diaphysis. The upper end, epiphysis, lower end, epiphysis. So this is distal epiphysis, this is proximal epiphysis. Now let's split the bone around the epiphyseal region with a piece of cartilage. Now we are taking this chunk of bone and look magnifying. Now we can see the compact bone, which is covering the spongy bone here, and the endosteum, and we have a piece of cartilage attached to the bone. If we take a piece of bone in the diaphysis from the diaphyseal region, we can see the compact bone and the inner surface layer, which is called endosteum. Inside the bone marrow cavity, we have yellow bone marrow. And as you can see, the bone is covered with a sheet of dense connective tissue, which is called periosteum. And the blood vessel, as you can see here, going through the periosteum, through the cortex of the bone, and it is giving blood supply to the cortical bone. So usually inner to that of the cortical bone is supplied by the nutrient artery. Outer one third of the cortical bone is supplied by this periosteum. So if whenever you see a long bone, somewhere in the middle of the diaphyseal region, we will be able to see a nutrient artery which is going through a nutrient foramen. So just try to look for it when you get a long bone. Here now we can see the epiphyseal plate, which has been ossified already. So this is a mature skeleton. So now we can see more and more clearly where the nutrient artery, which is penetrating through the periosteum, penetrating through the cortex, getting into the medullary cavity and giving blood supply to the cortex of the bone. Of course, in the diaphyseal region, we only have compact bone, but in the metaphyseal and epiphyseal region, our compact bones inside, they become spongy bone. And the bones are richly supplied with blood, and at any time, 3 to 11% of the body blood is in the bone. So now I hope you can appreciate the compact bone. So the diaphysis is made of compact bone, but when it comes to the end, which we call epiphysis, in this area, we will have a large area of spongy bone, which is surrounded by the compact bone. Compact bone become much thinner. So let's talk about the periosteum. Our bone outer surface is covered by a layer of connective tissue, and it is called periosteum. So periosteum covers every part of the bone except the articular surface, because articular surface is covered by articular cartilage. Articular cartilage is made of hyaline type of cartilage. And periosteum is a thick fibrous sheath, and which can be divided into outer periosteum and inner periosteum. Outer periosteum is very dense, irregular connective tissue, which is going to resist the force. Inner periosteal layer contain lots of blood vessels, lots of cells like osteoblast, osteoclast, and therefore it is going to support the bone, nutrition for the bone, and make the bone stronger. And the periosteums are attached to the underlying bone by dense, thick, strong fibers, which are called Sharpie's fibers. These are collagen fibers. And as we know, the bone has very rich blood and nerve supply. So now I'm gradually cutting the bone and trying to get the microscopic picture of bone in the compact bone. So now we can start seeing the some Hervatian canal. Of course, these are the microscopic structure. And inner surface, we can see the inner surface of the bone, which is lined by the endosteum. Endosteum is like periosteum, but not as strong. It is pretty weak structure. It has osteoblast and osteoclast. And you can start seeing the microscopic neurovascular bundles in the Hervatian canal, which is running along the length of the cortical bone. So now let's look at these microscopic structure more carefully. We can see a central canal, which we call Hervatian canal. And we can see the central canal with the surrounding cells here. One circular structure here, another circular structure here, another circular structure here. And this is what we call Hervatian system now. So Hervatian system is also called osteon. And if you look carefully in between the osteons, you can see these circular fibers here, these circular fibers here. They are interstitial lamellae. And all these osteons are packed with another form of lamellae, which is called circumferential lamellae. These lamellae are nothing more than the collagen fibers. So these collagen fibers wrap circumferential lamellae, they wrap around multiple osteons, and inside the osteons there are a few interstitial lamellae. And you can see the periosteum here, you can see the neurovascular bundle here, and there are horizontal running blood vessels into the canal. They are called perforating canal or Volkmann's canal. So if we look at the structure of a osteon, now we are really magnifying into an osteon, and we cannot even see a whole osteon now. We can see only might be a quarter of an osteon, which is made of the Hervatian canal or central canal. Inside the central canal, we have artery, veins, and nerve, neurovascular bundles, and they are lined by the, cycled by the osteocytes. Osteocytes are the inactive osteoblasts, and they are circular manner surrounded by the lamellae. So what is lamellae? A lamellae is, they are collagen fibers which are circulating circumferentially around the Hervatian canal to form the Hervatian system. And we can see the osteocytes which are sitting in the lacuna, and once these lacuna extends Then here we can see the lacuna extending. That is what we call canaliculi. So canaliculines are extension of the lacunae. So I know this is quite pretty deep, intense, but I want you to appreciate these structures. So now we are going to split the Harvesian system. We have in the central canal, which is Harvesian canal. In the central canal, we have neurovascular bundles, and they will be surrounded by the lamellae, which are collagen fibers. If you are a little bit more careful, you can see the lamellae running in opposite direction, like one direction here, another direction here, another direction. It's like a zigzag, which make the bone stronger. So now this is what we will see on the histology slide. And if we see this, I want you to remember bone, which is osteon. Osteon are present in the compact bone. How do we get bone nutrition? Of course, they are from blood supply. Bones are richly supplied with blood. Nutrients, artery and vein penetrate the bone at nutrient foramen. So I want you to go through these pages in our textbook and try to appreciate different bone markings. A bone is always under constant stress. Let's say if somebody is standing, and this is the normal shape of our femur, which is like a angle shape. And if we think about the vectors, if someone is standing, then the combined force is going from here to, from the femoral head directly to the center of the knee. So that is the normal force, but the shape of the bone is bent shape. And therefore, when we are standing, the outer surface of the femur is under tension, and inner surface of the femur is under compression. So I want you to remember that the bone is always under constant stress. So because of the different stress going through the bones, the bone has to remodel and reshape and resist. And they try to create, even in the spongy bone region, we are going to get tension lines and compression lines. These are the lines created by the collagen fibers to resist the deforming force. Let's talk about bone formation. Bones are formed by two-way, intramembranous and endochondral. Intramembranous means the mesenchymal cells, the stem cells, they just form into bone directly. So bones from directly from mesenchymal tissue. It is rare, and if we need to remember two bones: skull bone, which is a flat bone, and the clavicle, which is the collarbone. These two bones are formed by intramembranous. So it's easy now. The rest of the bones in our body, they are all formed by endochondral ossification. Endochondral ossification means we will start to get a little cartilage plate first, and that cartilage plate will be invaded by the bone cells and finally replaced by the bone cells and finally become bone. So bone starting from the base of the skull downwards, except the clavicle, they are all formed by endochondral ossification. So look at that endochondral ossification. We start to have a little cartilage plate. And then in the center of that, we have a bone forming center, which we call ossification center, appears. So because it is first to appear, we will call it primary ossification center. And this primary ossification center gradually gets bigger And now we inside there, with the growth and development, the cartilage plates gets bigger, the primary ossification center gradually gets bigger, and finally that ossification center is invaded by the blood vessels and now gradually deposited and change into bone. And when we are developing in that way, at the end of at the two ends of that cartilage plate, we have another bone forming center, ossification centers appear. Because they are second to form, therefore we will call it secondary ossification centers. So now we have got secondary ossification centers in the proximal region and secondary ossification center in the distal region of the bone. And they will be invaded by the blood vessels as usual, and these will gradually change into bone. And finally, only the ends of the long bone, which is going to contribute to the articular surface of the joint, are left with the cartilage. You can see the same thing on the distal end, and we still have a cartilage plate here left in between the main primary ossification center and secondary ossification center. And that cartilage plate remains open and change into bone and grow. And that's the way our bone learns from these epiphyseal plate. And these plates will open until we get skeletal maturity, which is usually about 16 years in boy and 14 years in girl. So now you can appreciate these little cartilages, they are still young, so the cartilage, small little cartilage forming into secondary ossification center is little bit small, and once they get older, they will get bigger. So here, what I want to mention is the different parts of the long bone. So the growth plate we have seen, which is called epiphyseal plate, or in short, physis. The bone on which was initially secondary ossification center, now it became bone, we will call epiphysis. And this is the bone which is formed from the primary ossification center. And that can be divided into the long shaft, which is called diaphysis, and the flare region of that diaphysis is called metaphysis. So now we know which is epiphysis, physis, metaphysis, and diaphysis. Physis is growth plate, and therefore this is an X-ray of an immature skeleton. I'm going to stop here. Thank you for your concentration. I think you need to repeat it again because there are lots of information.